circumstances were.
Just turn the mic her way, please. There you go.
When I started this process in the summer of 2018, my husband was terminally ill. My husband could not help to shovel after a snowstorm or clean off the car. I did the shoveling and the cleaning the snow off the car. My husband required much care. I was his primary caregiver. I needed a place to protect the car from the elements. There was no garage on the property. My husband recently has passed away, however, I still need a place to protect my car during the storms. I find the shoveling and the cleaning of the car after a storm extremely difficult. My husband's illness of 10 years has taken its toll on me. He suffered from Alzheimer's dementia. I would find it most helpful to have a carport to protect my car from the elements. Thank you for your kind attention in my case.
Just speaking from the board, I'm sorry for your loss.
Thank you.
Tom?
I have one quick question for the architect or the applicant. You have two sort of rectangles in the area, the hatched area where the carport is proposed. What are those? What do those represent?
As we're looking at the site plan?
Correct. Yes.
As we're looking at the site plan where there's the dimension of 22 feet, and then it's cross hatch for hatching at an angle. There, that's the carport itself. That's what we're proposing as a carport. At the back of the house, where you see vertical hatching, that's an existing deck. That's not covered.
Well, do you mind just coming here for a second?
Oh, sure.
I'm just talking about these two rectangles. I'm just wondering what these are.
Oh, I'm sorry, yes. The one small rectangle, it's not hatched, it's a darker square. That's an exterior chimney. And the other rectangle in back of that, for the rear yard, is an AC pad.
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning pad.
I'm just going to move down the different variances that are being requested. Just talk about
Sure.
the justifications for it. So you mentioned that the lot is undersized relative to the current zone standards of 75 by 100 feet. This lot's at 50 by 100 feet.
Correct.
Are there any other features of the property such that would impact the existing front yard situation? For instance, I believe the house is set back in a non-conforming location, and the carport itself is set back even a foot further. Is that true?
That's correct. We are requiring as a front yard setback of 30 feet. The existing house, the house itself is 24.6 feet. That doesn't even include that front platform and step.
And the carport?
And the carport, we're stepping back 1 foot from the front of the house. So that's going to be 25.6 feet. To make it the 30 feet, just really has the front of the car then as it's pulling in, pushing into the rear yard.
And relative to the house, we'll say, call it to the left, or in this case, it's the south, appears to be set back even closer to the street.
Yes.
In this house.
Or it
So
says,
would you suggest that the proposed front yard setback is within keeping or consistent with the neighborhood?
it is consistent with the neighborhood, even looking at additional homes along Poplar Avenue.
With regard to lot coverage, it looks like the area of the carport is not much greater than the existing area of impervious coverage that you have now. Any idea of an approximation of how much additional coverage that is?
It's 0.8% as the additional coverage.
How many square feet is that?
And 0.8 off 5,000.
Catch you up.
You did. It's about 40. It's about 40 square feet.
40 square feet. So again, you're covering at least part of an area that's already paved. Because you're not adding a tremendous amount of lot coverage. In this case, it's 40 square feet. Are you directing the water flow in any particular direction? Is there a gutter on this?
We are not proposing a gutter on that as well. None is proposed. I'm checking with my calculator. 40. 40 square, yes.
So some amount more than what's there today.
Yes, slightly.
Relative to the combined side yard variance being requested, again, 12 feet is required for both yards. You're requesting 8.1. In this case, the carport will have a 2-foot setback, but it's my understanding the carport won't be enclosed. Is that correct?
That's correct. It's open on 3 sides.
So does that make a difference as opposed to whether it was an enclosed garage in terms of visual impacts or otherwise?
Visually, since it is open, and this is of course raised up, it's not going to have the same impact as if you would have an enclosed side up against that adjacent structure, that neighbor on the south.
And it wouldn't pose any safety issues? in
I
terms of that?
I don't believe it would propose any safety issues as it is open.
Just bear with me a moment. So, the last comment or question that I have is that I think what's being used now is a temporary canopy or covering, if you will. So would this permanent structure, one, be a better alternative, let's say, from a visual and functional standpoint for the neighborhood, as opposed to a tented structure?
I believe it would. You're looking at a tent structure as what had been previously existing, and what's existing now, I believe. I know that had been damaged, but was it replaced? Okay, so it hadn't been replaced, but in seeing that, you're looking at a tent in your side yard, and to see something that's more of a permanent structure, more durable structure, and remaining open is, I think, definitely going to be a positive look on that side yard as opposed to the tent.
My final comment, I think in general garages and carports are somewhat of a modern amenity, and on the street in particular, at most, there may be a few that do not have such features, such as this one at the moment. If we were to install a garage at this location, it would require variances and possibly more than this particular carport. So I think you've heard some of the justifications in terms of whatever hardships there may be in terms of the existing conditions and if there are any public benefits of what's being proposed. And I think that's what the board needs to take into consideration.
So carports would generally fall under the same type of ordinance as a garage?
Technically,
There's
yeah.
nothing in our ordinances that don't allow it, is that correct? That don't allow for a carport?
That don't allow carport, not that I'm aware of.
Okay. Is that the end of your testimony?
I believe it is at this point,
So I'll
yes.
open it up to the board. I'll start on the left. Let's go to Councilman first.
I'm satisfied.
I had a question. What is the measurement? The existing driveway, how much further to the left is the carport going to be than the existing driveway?
The existing driveway actually goes at an angle from Poplar Avenue back toward the rear yard. So it does vary from approximately 6 inches to about 1 foot and almost 1.5 foot. I think it's 1 foot 3 inches.
So it's on an angle as you go further in. It's heading further south. The angle is that direction.
It's headed further north. Actually, it's going toward the house.
Towards the house.
You
Okay,
can
so
actually see the line of it inside the cross section shows it.
How? So the 2 foot measurement to the edge of the property line is that's the area that's the closest.
That's correct. That's the closest, and that's at the carport itself. And the driveway is just in from that point by about 6 inches, and then angles further in as
So
you go toward the rear
the
yard.
most that's going to be additional is 6 inches. We're to the left, looking at the house from the front. In addition to the driveway, it's gonna be 6
In
inches
addition
more
to
at
the driveway, it's going to be 6 inches, then increased to about 15 inches or 16 inches because of the angle of the driveway. Going
So the 16
back.
inches will be at the front.
The 6 inches would be at the front, the
Okay.
16 inches would be at the back.
Okay, I'm trying to figure out at what point is it gonna be closest to the neighboring house or closest to the
And
property line?
at that point, well, it's going to be parallel, the carport itself is going to be parallel to the property line. So that's going to be a consistent line
Okay.
of that 2 feet. And then what happens is the driveway itself starts at an area that's about 6 inches in, so about 2 foot 6 inches in. And then as you go back down the driveway toward the rear yard, it will increase. It does increase now to a little over 3 feet.
And you know, at the part where it's the closest to the property line, what the distance is from that to the neighbor's home?
Yes, it's 6 feet.
6 feet?
You know, I did have one question, just a concern, I didn't mean to cut you off.
That's okay.
In terms of functionality, what's the clearance between the driveway and the roof joist, not the joist, the, term is escaping.
The post?
Now, the lowest, cross beam, for lack of a better term.
So off the girder and the beam that's going to be running off the front, it is, you're looking at height,
Yeah, the distance from the pavement to
is 8 feet.
8 feet. Just wanted to make sure a car can.
We'll get under it. Right.
Mr. Grasso?
You mentioned earlier, is this, I don't have the plan in front of me, but is the carport, is it going to have any gutter on it or
No, I'm not proposing any gutter
Oh,
on
you
it.
said.
Okay, and I have to open this up, but the roof is flat on the carport?
No, actually, it's pitched roof. So that this way it isn't collecting snow. We want to get a pitch, which is about a 4 and 12 pitch. So for every 12 inches, you go out, you're going up 4 inches, and that's going to create the slope.
And the pitch is which direction?
It is toward the neighbor's yard. It has to be away from the house.
Okay, I mean, with that 6 feet of clearance, you don't anticipate any rain where it's pitched towards the neighbor's house? That this would be
No,
a
I don't
problem
think
for the
that there's very much of a runoff from that anyway.
Right, because it's only the carport roof.
Right. And the pitch of the house does run front to back, so the gutters are rolling along the front of the house and against the rear of the house.
Right. Okay,
That's good.
I'm good.
Mr. Craig?
The only question, have you discussed this with your neighbor at all? Any issues with them?
My neighbor, yes, it's not a problem.
And they've been noticed.
Yeah. not very many.
Ryan?
I have no questions.
Mr. Mervyn?
I have a couple. Mr. O'Fonnell, I recognize your need and hardship. I have one concern, and that concern is, once you exit this residence, there's a tendency for this structure to be enclosed and become a room. And with that, there's also a tendency to go with a second story. I would propose and recommend that your variance is for this be granted, but the structure be considered temporary to be removed after you exit the property. And that's for discussion.
Could there be some sort of, something in there stating that it cannot be built further upon instead of, because it's obviously going to be a sellable asset on the property to the next people who purchase the property, but could you restrict it from being enclosed and built further upon without a variance?
You could, but recognize you're looking at the plan. It's 2 feet from the property line. It's not 10 feet, it's 2 feet. You're well into the side yard.
Yeah, I get that.
And my experience has been is with time, all restrictions tend to disappear, okay? Especially municipally, all right? Not on purpose, but somehow. So I would recommend that that this structure be considered temporary. Once you sell or exit the house, that it is removed.
Just want to throw a few things out there. There are situations, and I'll let the attorney address, where the board, I believe, can grant temporary variances. I think we should think about the mechanism in terms of, I agree with you, and I know things like that happen where people will add on in the future and so forth. So I'm just wondering about what the best way to do it. And my thought is that if we're saying that these variances are okay today in a physical sense, then I would think that rationale would carry to a new property owner. So what might the mechanism be that we can control further expansion? I completely agree with you, but what's the best way to deal with it is my question. And enforcement becomes an issue too.
I don't see it as I mean, if we're granting a variance for the side yard setback for the carport, if somebody wanted to come and put an addition there, they would still have to come back for the variance for the setback, because this is not granting them being able to build,
They would. I think the concern is if that were being closed without proper approval,
I
which
didn't
may
catch
happen
that.
on occasion.
If I understand your question, okay, to answer it as a layman, you could have a deed restriction, which I don't think is needed in this case. There is a property card, I believe, maybe in the municipal office, where something like that could be recorded, or some other means to trigger the building department. Because that building department can change 5 times over by the time the house is vacated. So those are my 2 thoughts. From a legal standpoint,
I'm just throwing that, it's up to the board how they want.
but as far as I'm concerned, I fully understand her need.
Sure.
As far as I'm concerned right now, you haven't convinced me that it should remain permanently. And I think that we can,
So I'm just gonna
go ahead, it's still for discussion.
spitball a little bit here. As you drive up and down the streets of River Edge, and Tom and I spoke about it very briefly the other day, there's construction going on almost every street. It's incredible. People are knocking on the door of River Edge, quite ferociously. So enforcement actions on something like this, even if we did make it a condition, I think would be very hard to follow through down the road. And the fact that we're only approving a carport versus a garage, where a garage could conceivably happen exactly the way you said, where they could turn it into a room or quietly build on top of it. There'll be no building on top of a carport. I think we can all agree with that. So my feeling is, because it's a carport and because it's not going to be a massive structure by any sense, and I think it might provide more of a hardship for the homeowner if she has to get rid of it before she tries to sell the house, I would recommend that we just have specific wording in the approval that it remains only a carport. Same enforcement action, because if they change the carport, it either gets enforced or it doesn't get enforced. If she moves, it either gets enforced or doesn't get enforced. There's no mechanism to follow through either way. So I think it would be in the best interest of the homeowner if we didn't impose that restriction. We just said, look, it's a carport, it's always going to be a carport. If you want to make it a garage, you got to come back up. If you want to build on top of it, I don't know how you could do that, but I think you get my point.
If I may, just a clarification with regard to that cross girder in the front. The average is about 8 feet. At the front, it's 7 feet off the grade, but because the grade slopes to the back, about 9 feet, so the average is coming out to about 7. Toward, average is about 8. Toward that, because the driveway is much lower than the main floor of the house, it is at 2 different levels. It's almost like a split level if you were now going to enclose that. So now as you're starting to look at how you're going to do the structuring getting into the house, which is something that we had discussed, so that you have direct access in. You'd need a platform, you'd need steps in getting in. It's not a convenient way of doing it. Structurally, we're putting this on posts, so physically you would not be able to support a second floor on that and close it. I
Yeah,
believe
it's the carport.
either way you would have to come back before the board, but it is an enforcement issue.
My biggest concern is that it doesn't fly away on a night like tonight.
It will fly
I
away.
don't think that's 100% true.
I'm sorry.
I don't think what you stated is 100% true,
Which is,
because I can simply put another column in that long girder,
that won't do it.
make it work structurally, sure.
Then if you are putting in any other support, well,
Another
Bobby,
post
you
on
need
the sonotube.
then you would need a building permit
You're gonna need
in
to,
order to do it.
well, that's what I'm afraid of.
That they'll do it
My
without a permit.
major fear is this will creep into a closed room. With the,
I understand your concern.
all right, with the possibility of going up.
It wouldn't be the first time either.
Well, I think if
Thank
we worded the memorialization correctly, if anybody were to ever buy this house, or if she were to come in and pull a permit for even for a bathroom, whoever the building department person is at the time is gonna review what we approved in the past and do a drive-by and make sure that hasn't changed. And I think that's probably the best case for enforcement action. So, you know, again, to have something to allow a structure like this, and then to force somebody to take it down, again, in my personal opinion, I think it creates more of a hardship than it's worth. And
I would agree. And I think there's.
and I never go against you, by the way.
And I think there would be, I think there would be an enforcement issue too, because are we gonna keep track of the for sale records that the property was sold, and who's gonna go down there and tell them that they need to take this down? I think there is a hardship here. I think this is needed, but I think putting in the wording, as Mr. Eric Killian said, of this is the only thing that can be done on this property. Yes, someone can try and skirt the rules, but we have this in writing that this is the way this is intended. It's going to be a carport. It's, you know, and going forward, if this property was sold, it is something that adds value to the property. And I would not be for telling the next people that they have to knock it down.
But it'll be
But again,
specific.
it's all about enforcement, but
And in
ask
the
them to knock it down
approval,
as
it'll be
enforcement too.
specific that it's only a carpet.
Right.
And that's all you want. So it will make everybody happy.
Understood.
I'd like to entertain anybody else for anything? Entertain a motion to open to the public.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? This is the public's opportunity to voice on this application. Do you have anything you want to ask? Okay, being that nobody rose, we'll move to close.
So moved.
Second,
Aye.
all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Do you have anything else you want to add before we move forward?
No, please.
Tom,
Thank
do
you.
you have anything else you want to add? Anybody else on the board have anything? I would like to ask.
You need a motion?
Yes, I would.
As you look at me?
Yes. I know that I'm very persuasive sometimes, too.
Okay, we're gonna leave that. I'll make a motion that the application for a carport be granted along with the variances cited, and that this carport remain open at all times, and is not to be enclosed or further improved, and that this restriction of non-enclosure be recorded within the borough where it is deemed necessary and fully visible to the public officials, not limiting to them, but such places as the property card or whatever records there are, so future building department action.
Well, the property card is automatically updated at the time of the completion. So that's not an issue. And it will become part of the folder for that home.
Correct, okay.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Councilman Papaleo?
Go.
Yep, that was a second.
Yes, I got that.
Then you can roll call.
Okay. Okay. Councilman Papaleo?
Yes.
Chair Eric
Yes.
Elliott,
Perfect.
Vice Chair Merriman,
Yes.
Mr. Grasso,
Yes.
Mr. Cray, and Mr. Gibbons.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, best of luck.
Thanks very much.
And you can't be painted big.
All right, so we probably stay up here till around 10:30 now before the storm goes. So we'll just take our time with you guys. You can come on up. Okay, our next application is Razak, Ian and Michelle, 708 Millbrook Road, Block 305, Lot 40, for a deck extension. Good evening, sir. How are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm very well.
Yeah, it should be.
Sir, will you raise your right hand? Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to help you God?
I do.
Proceed.
Okay. So we currently have a existing enclosed deck, and we're seeking a variance to attach that portion of the deck to the current side of the house, and we're seeking, I think it's about 2% of the property, I guess 2% of the property proposed layout to increase that. We do have an undersized lot. We probably, if not the smallest backyard in River Edge, one of the smallest. We don't enjoy it, so we have it's a sloped backyard that looks kind of back into the park and in someone else's yard. So we want to basically open up that existing closed-in deck and extend it to the side of the house that's currently there. We would not impede on the 25 feet to the property line or the 7.5 feet on each side that we currently are restricted to. It's just connecting the house, and we're going to put a slider on that existing portion of the house that would connect the deck to for us to walk around and go to the kitchen. So our backyard would basically be our deck.
Not uncommon in River Edge.
Yes. Well, when we bought it, it was a great idea, but now we want more space.
Mr. Behrens.
So as you've heard from the applicant, there's two variances, one for maximum lot coverage. They're over by about 2%, which translates to approximately 113.5 square feet. And they're over by 2% also on the maximum improved lot coverage, which includes impervious surfaces in addition to the structure itself. So again, you pointed out that the area that you're going to remove and replace, or a portion thereof, is enclosed, meaning that it has walls and a roof.
Correct.
And the
It's a
deck you're
screening.
proposing will be essentially open to the air with railings.
Correct. It's dilapidated and it's an eyesore.
It meets the setbacks as far as I've been able to calculate. You mentioned you have a sloped yard, so from your main living level to, let's say, the backyard,
Right.
closest part, what kind of distance are we talking
From the extended part of the house, or
like if you were to go out from, let's say there's a door right here, what's the drop to your backyard?
probably 8 feet.
8 feet. So
Yeah,
something that
because
would-
if I'm staying in my backyard, my house is literally 3 stories, because the back portion, that's the extended portion of the house, there's a basement with a door that leads right under that, and we're going to put some pavers underneath and make that nice too. It's crumpled stone right now and not very nice on the eyes, so.
And having just a patio, I guess is my point, there'd be a good distance between your main living level and the house, and if you were to just say have a patio and not a deck. So the deck
Yes, yeah, it would be-
functionally is a better,
8 to 13 steps down. It's pretty sloped. We have current steps now that wrap around. Those are about 5 steps, but that's even with the door on the side. So that's 5 just to get down into that portion that's the corner of the house.
so we're talking about, again, an increase of 113.5 square feet. You have a deck that's approximately 25 by 12. Just doing some rough calculations, if you were to get down to a conforming size, you'd be at 25 by 8, which 8 could be considered a little tight, I guess, if you're trying to get a table or otherwise. So,
And we wouldn't be able to put the slider there, I don't think.
so it may reduce your options. I mean, general question that we ask is why can't you conform? And that may be one justification.
Right.
In addition to other considerations. The test or the criteria for granting a variance relief is one, and I think you heard it before. Are there any
Sure.
hardships? You mentioned that you have an undersized lot, the width being 56.75 feet with a requirement is 75.
Right.
You may not.
Right.
You're aware of that. And also you have a sloping yard that creates that distance from the main living level to your backyard.
Right.
Hence you're looking for a deck versus a patio.
Right.
And the other part of the test, or the other test is rather what's known as the public benefits test. So is there a benefit in replacing this deck or having this project move forward and having a deck in that location versus the enclosed area of the house in terms of visibility or impacts or even functionally to neighbors? So I think that's the criteria that, so you're replacing an enclosed, somewhat bulky space for all intents in terms of volume versus a deck, and does that have any benefits? And granted, the deck is larger than that space. Is there a benefit in that replacement? And I mean, that's kind of where we're at. So,
Okay.
I don't know if the board has any questions at this point in terms of, again, conformity.
I would say from my perspective, I think in terms of the hardship, the deck is very old. I don't know the exact date of the deck. You guys might know more than that. I have a neighbor who's been around for about almost 50 years. He said it's been there as long as he can remember, and it's showing it. So we've piecemealed, we painted, we've done everything we can. So our next step is to basically tear that down, and then we're left with stairs going to a backyard that is not much of a backyard. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay. Tom?
Sure, just, your neighbors have certainly been noticed. What has been their reaction?
Positive. The two neighbors that I spoke to, right and left of me, are positive about it.
Seth?
Mr. Grasso?
No, I have nothing.
The new deck that you're proposing, you're basically just bringing it out so that it's in line with
With the
the
home.
existing rear facade of
Correct.
of the building, right?
Correct.
And it'll be more open visually than what's there now because it's enclosed, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So from kind of a sight line for everybody looking towards the yard, it's actually going to open that up more than how it appears now.
Well, the way it looks now, it's the enclosed porch and then the bump out, so no one can really see the center of my house.
Right.
Even if you walk by the side, you're still seeing the enclosed porch.
Right.
I guess what you would see is an extra 2 feet out,
Okay.
right?
Right, because you're going to have, it's an open deck. It's
Correct.
still a-
Yeah.
And then again, it'll just be in line with the back facade.
Correct,
and
yeah.
that's where it comes in. Okay.
I have no issue.
Did I see a set of stairs going to a lower level?
Yes.
That's gonna be decked over?
We're going to redo that, and those will be stairs, current stairs now will be done with the same stairs that are going to be the steps up to the deck.
Okay. So you'll have, you'll still have a means of egress from the basement?
Yes.
Okay. No further questions?
You know, these applications that are 2%, 3%, I'd like to maybe have the council revisit in the future and maybe allow for some latitude with our zoning officer to look at this project and instead of having to come up here on a 2% addition, maybe give our professional a little latitude. We've talked about this before at other meetings, so maybe Tom and I will get together someday and we'll discuss it and see where we can go with that.
Do you want this body to make a motion that a formal request be made of the council and sent forward?
Let's do it informally first. Let's
Okay.
bounce it around a little bit, and then we can always do that. Yeah, because we have to work on our master plan as well. So it's just when I see these minor variances that are coming for the board and having to drag somebody up here for this, where Tom could just uses discretion again, I'm not talking about a 10% or even a 5%, but, 1-2%, as we've talked about it before, and I discussed it with the last zoning officer we had, maybe give him a little latitude down the road so he could just make that decision.
So it would be improper for me to speak for the council, but for myself, I think this is a good idea.
Thanks, Tom. Open to the public? Do I do a motion?
So me.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstained? Michelle, would you like to say something? Note that for the record. Motion to close to the public?
So moved.
Second? Tom, anything else? I'll entertain a motion on this application.
I so move to grant the variances as requested.
Do I have a second?
Second.
And roll call, please.
Councilman Papaleo?
Yes.
Chair Eric Hellion?
Yes.
Vice Chair Merriman?
Yes.
Mr. Grasso?
Yes.
Mr. Craig?
Yes.
Mr. Gibbons?
Yes.
Motion passed. Wish
Thank
you
you.
luck. Enjoy your new deck. And
Thank you
please be
so
careful
much.
going home.
Thank you. And if I can ask, if you get that 1-2%, can you name that after us?
No, they'll probably be.
It would be the Eric Halian law. Just a quick update. Lots of stuff coming forward, a lot of houses getting built, a lot of people coming in for these kind of approvals. So I'm going to try to gang everything up for a meeting in August, so we don't have 2 meetings in August. We can enjoy our summer, but we'll take that as it comes. I know there's been some talk south end of town, over on Johnson Avenue, structure for non-housing, which I think is very positive. It would be a commercial structure. I'm not exactly sure of the whole nature, so I'm not going to go any further into it, but so we're going to have that coming up, but I think they have to visit the mayor and council first for some relief there. Other than that, I'll entertain a motion to, anybody else?
You're switching meeting dates in August. Just be informed, I'm going to be out of town 16th through the 26th. I don't know how that's going to fall.
Okay. Anybody else have anything? A motion to close.
So moved.
Second? You may want to.
You can say if you want.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you.
Great. All right.
Thank you over there.